It's getting hot out there, and since we didn't want to give up playing outside, it was time to make some shade. This project started with some very reasonably priced umbrellas that my husband found online. And while you can buy an umbrella, stick it in a umbrella stand and call it good, I wanted to create a beautiful side table that would have a place for my drink and a little bit more. So I partnered with Waterlox to create these amazing side table umbrella stands. So let's get started. The angles of the base of my table may look a little complicated for a beginner, but I can promise you they are not. All it takes is what I call a double angle to achieve this pyramid shape. And in order to do that, you're going to set both angles on your miter saw to a 10 degree. So you're going to set your base at a 10 degree angle, and you're going to set your miter at a 10 degree angle. Then when you cut your table legs, you create a pyramid design. Now it is important to remember that when you cut them, you're cutting both the top and the bottom of the leg in the exact same direction. So don't accidentally twist them, and that way your pyramid will stay nice and perfect. Once all 4 of the legs are cut with that double angle, it's easy to finish the cuts for the base because you're going to do a single 10 degree cut on all of the rest of the pieces for the base. So make sure to take that miter off of that 10 degrees and cut all the pieces. With all the pieces cut, it's time to assemble. Now it can be a little tricky working with these double angles if you don't take the time to lay out all of your pieces and mark where your pocket holes are going to go. So pay attention to those angles. The longest point of the base of your legs needs to be on the far corners of your pyramid table. And then you can note where that's going to be and mark which boards are going to need pocket holes in them. I drilled pocket holes on all of these side boards, and I only put 1 pocket hole in the side because of that 10 degree angle. 2 pocket holes on that 2x2 board was just a little too much, and they held in place beautifully with a 2.5 inch pocket hole screw and some wood glue. The sides are assembled with those 3 boards. They're spaced 1/2 inch apart and 1/2 inch up from the bottom. Now with that bottom, that double angle can be a little tricky to figure out which way to go 1/2 inch up. So I chose to do 1/2 inch up from the inside angle. It doesn't really matter as long as all 4 boards are done correctly. Start by assembling the 2 sides, getting all of the boards attached. Then you will attach those 2 sides together with 3 more boards on each side to create the complete pyramid. I used face frame clamps for the 2 sides, but then when it came to attaching those 2 together, the face frame clamps wouldn't work because the boards were already attached to the sides. So I got a little creative with some clamping by clamping both the side piece and the board I was working with to the tabletop to keep them from moving and to keep the front of that pyramid to be as level as possible. And again, I secured everything with wood glue and a pocket hole screw. Made sure to choose pocket hole screws that were made for outdoor use since this umbrella is going to be outdoors. Now to add the lower shelf into the pyramid base, you will need to measure the boards or the opening left in your pyramid and cut boards to fit that. These boards do have a 10 degree angle on it since that pyramid base has that 10 degree angle to it. And they're 1x3 boards, so do your measurements, cut it. I always like to do 1, cut a little large, test it, and then shave down as needed until I have all 4 boards that fit. Then I again used pocket holes to attach these, so I added pocket hole set for 3/4 inch thick material since I'm just using 1x3s for this shelf, and I had evenly spaced these along the inside of that pyramid. Now it's not quite a 1/2 inch between the boards here, so just evenly space them, again depending on exactly how far up or down you put that 1/2 inch when you set that first board on the bottom. It can really affect this measurement, and so make sure to measure and cut boards to what you have, not to what a cut list may say. And with all boards attached, it was time to put a hole in the center. Now this hole is going to be where my umbrella stand comes up through the base, and I measured the top of my umbrella stand And so you can make it as big or as small of a hole as you want. And I chose to make it very snug so it fit really close around that. I can unscrew the top of the umbrella stand to therefore then rescrew it together with the base underneath, and that'll hold it really good and together. So I made sure to use a guide on my drill to keep that hole straight up and down. If you don't have a guide, you can actually make one with some scrap wood. I used just a basic guide that has come in quite handy, so I'll make sure to put a link below. And with the base fully assembled, I decided to move on to the tabletop. And the tabletop is done with 2x4s and 2x3s. And I cut all of the pieces to length, and then I marked out where they're all going to connect on my side pieces. And these are held together again really easily with pocket holes and wood glue. There's a 1/2 inch gap between them, so I marked it all out on both boards and then made sure to face clamp those, and it was really easy to assemble this beautiful tabletop. To build my side tables, I chose to use cedar wood. I found some cedar 2x4s at a local salvage shop. And they did require some cleanup, and then I did have to rip them to size because I used 2x2s, 2x3s, and 1x3s as well as the 2x4s in this project. But they turned out to be absolutely beautiful cedar boards after I did a little bit of work on them, and you can really see that in the top. You can choose to use whatever wood you want, and the Waterlox is going to be a great sealer. We're using a marine finish for any wood, but I truly love the way it really brought out the warmth in the cedar. And with the tabletop fully assembled, it was time to also add a hole to this for the umbrella pole. Now this time I measured the actual diameter of my umbrella pole, not the base, because it's going to be much smaller. And I used a Forstner bit, again with that drill guide, to drill all the way through that center tabletop board. And to attach the base to the tabletop, I chose to use figure-8 fasteners. These are really easy to use, and they allow for a little bit of movement as the weather changes and the table can expand and contract. So I attached those first to the top of my table base, and then flipped it over and centered it on the tabletop and attached those again with a screw. And with them fully built, it was time to finish. Before finish, you do need to sand everything. For the Waterlox finish, you want to sand it with 100 grit sandpaper. And then before the actual sealer gets applied, you rub everything down with their universal tongue oil sealer. And this will just sink right into the wood and instantly make the color of that wood pop. And I am going to be spraying my Waterlox finish on these end tables, and the Waterlox marine finish sprays beautifully, and I'll talk about that a little more in a minute. But the universal tongue oil sealer cannot be sprayed on. It is a rub-in finish, and so I had to rub this in. It's really easy to do with a lint-free rag, and you can get it in all of those nooks and crannies on the unique design of these side tables. To spray the Waterlox marine finish, you will need to thin it down. I used mineral spirits to thin it, and the directions do say around 25% thinning, and I did exactly 25%, and it sprayed beautifully with my HVLP paint sprayer. Once my finish was properly thinned, I strained it into my sprayer, and then I donned all of my safety gear to get to spraying. And I learned after the first coat to make sure to cover my hair. The spray got all over my hair and I looked like a bad Aquanet commercial. So I made sure to put on my respirator, my safety glasses, and typically I also wear gloves, but for some reason I forgot on this particular one. But I would highly recommend gloves as well because it will get on your fingers. And then covering my hair up, I was ready to start spraying. When spraying a finish with the HVLP sprayer, it's important to make sure that you have a nice good flow coming out of it. You want a little bit thicker than what you might think finish, but not thick enough to run. It can be really easy to do too thin of a layer of finish with a sprayer, and then it's not going to self-level. So I made sure to test it out till I had a decent amount of product coming out. And then I moved on to spraying, and I sprayed the bottom underside first. Then I was able to flip it on top, and I used just some of these little points that are used for painting to sit underneath the 4 corners. That way, even though it was already sprayed on the bottom, those little points, I could still spray the rest of it without having to wait for the underside to dry. Then I just went around every single part and gave everything a nice thorough coat. If you look at it with the reflection of the light on it, you'll actually see if the coat is more solid or if it's still a little spotty and needs a second coating on it. And that way you know if you've got enough seal on it to level out and give you a really good coat. After the first coat is done, you will want to apply a second coat. Waterlox does not require you to sand between coats. It is not needed for adhesion. However, you may want to do it in case there is a little grittiness to your first coat. And I always find my first coat has a little bit of grittiness to it. And that's just could be dust in the room. It could be because it raises some of that grain, that UTOS finish and that first coat. So I always like to do a very light sanding after the first coat. Then I wipe everything clean with a tack cloth and apply a second coat. You can also apply a third coat if you desire. On softer woods, a third coat could be very useful because a lot of this product will soak right into the wood, which is great because it's creating a great seal on the wood. So apply a third coat if desired, and then make sure to let that sit for 24 hours before you take it out and put your umbrella in it and enjoy a day in the sun with a little shade on the side. And I cannot wait until I get to put these side table umbrella stands to good use. If you like this video, make sure to hit subscribe so you don't miss out on other projects. But until then, you can find me at the lake.